I'll never forget sitting in a hospital room just days after my first cancer diagnosis. It was late June, early July 2012. The doctors had told me I had some kind of lymphoma. They weren't completely sure what kind yet, although they had a pretty good idea. The tumor inside my chest was so large that they wanted me to stay in the hospital while they figured it out. They needed to make sure I wasn't interfering with my heart, my breathing, or anything else important. It was scary, but I was also incredibly blessed. My family had already been planning to visit, so they were there. My work family, they showed up in a big way too. At the time, I was an executive producer in a television newsroom. One of my fellow executive producers, Cheryl, came to see me almost immediately. Most people brought magazines, snacks, drinks that I could have in the hospital, and lots of love. Cheryl brought me a message. Suzanne, you need to get a hobby. And she was right. Cheryl had witnessed the pace I had been keeping for years. I worked hard. I pushed through. I kept going. In fact, that tendency to push through was part of how my cancer was discovered. For months, I'd been dealing with one sinus infection after another, an ear infection, cold or respiratory issues, just one after another after another. Instead of really stopping, I could swing by an urgent care on my way to work. I was hoping to get an antibiotic this time and just keep moving. Thankfully, one very observant urgent care doctor noticed how many times I had been there. She ordered a chest x-ray, and that's when they found the tumor. So when Cheryl sat beside my hospital bed and told me I needed something in my life that wasn't work, responsibility, or achievement, she wasn't joking. I needed something that could lower the pressure, something that could help my heart, body, and soul relax. And I listened, sort of. During my cancer recovery, I made several trips to Hobby Lobby and bought hundreds of dollars worth of scrapbooking supplies. Paper, stickers, tools, albums, all the things. Do you know how many scrapbooks I made? Basically none. I'm pretty sure some of those supplies are still sitting in a closet. My intentions were good, and Cheryl's advice was excellent, but I hadn't quite figured out what she was really telling me. A hobby isn't something else you're supposed to do. It isn't another project to accomplish, and it definitely isn't another box to check. A hobby should give something back to you. That distinction matters, especially if you're a Christian working mom, a woman in ministry, or a leader carrying responsibility at work, home, church, and everywhere in between. You already have enough obligations. You don't need to turn joy into another assignment. Fast forward about a decade. I'd survived another cancer diagnosis, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to write a book. I got permission from my bosses and started writing. I worked on it during vacations and weekends, and then I started learning everything that comes with writing a book, building a platform, blogging, social media, speaking, sharing the message I felt called to share. People would sometimes look at everything I was doing and ask how I possibly managed on top of everything else I had, including a demanding career. But here's the funny thing. Those things were part of how I survived some of my most challenging professional years. Writing didn't always drain me. It restored me. Creating didn't always feel like work. Sometimes it was a break from work. Without realizing it, I'd finally taken Cheryl's advice. I'd found a hobby. And then, of course, I turned my hobby into my job, which meant I needed a hobby again. The question's been sitting with me lately. What am I interested in? What do I already find myself doing when nobody is asking me to do it? What have I been tinkering with that I'd like to do more? The answer was right outside my door. Literally. Plants. I've always enjoyed planting flowers. I've tinkered with gardening for years, but this past spring, living in a slower place, I began to notice how much joy I found in it. Putting my hands in dirt, watching something grow, figuring out what thrives where, trying something and occasionally killing it, and then trying again. My little bit of tinkering has gradually become more tinkering. So this fall, I'm trying something new. Fall vegetables. I think I may have found my new hobby. And no, before you ask, I'm not turning this into a gardening blog. This actually has everything to do with what I talk about when I talk about the bigger picture. This is part of living a life that's called to all of it. faith, family, career, calling it. And yes, you. We can't faithfully live out everything God has called us to while believing every waking minute has to produce something. We've been conditioned by hustle culture to believe that if we're not working, achieving, serving, cleaning, planning, or checking something off a list, we're wasting time. But what if doing something that brings you joy isn't wasted time? What if it's part of what allows you to keep going? I often say that rest doesn't always look like a bubble bath or a nap. Sometimes rest looks like putting your hands in the dirt, painting, playing pickleball, reading a novel, knitting, baking bread, taking pictures, playing an instrument, working a puzzle, walking through the woods, doing something you enjoy simply because you enjoy doing it. It's not one more thing. It's something that fills the tank you're constantly pouring out of. That's an important lesson for anyone interested in leadership coaching or leadership training for women. It's also part of leadership development. You cannot lead everyone else if you're never allowed to be a whole person yourself. Leading with faith doesn't mean ignoring your limits. Biblical leadership principles include stewardship. That includes stewardship of your energy, attention, body, relationship, and joy. Well, and there's research behind this. It's not just Suzanne's opinion. A 2023 study published in Nature Medicine examined more than 93,000 adults aged 65 and older across 16 countries. Researchers found that having a hobby was associated with fewer depressive symptoms, better self-reported health, greater happiness, and higher life satisfaction. The study included activities such as arts and crafts, reading, games, sports, gardening, volunteering, and group participation. There may be several reasons hobbies are connected with well-being. They can create space for creativity, relaxation, connection, cognitive stimulation, and purpose. The study wasn't observational. It does not prove that hobbies treat or prevent, the study was observational. It does not prove that hobbies treat or prevent depression, cancer, or any other health condition. But it does offer an encouraging reminder. There may be real value in making room for activities we enjoy. Maybe we were never designed to spend our entire lives producing. So here's what I want you to think about this week. Is there something you've wanted to try? Something you used to love but stopped making time for? Something you keep thinking, someday I'd like to? Now consider where your time is going. I'm not talking about taking away the little bit of rest you desperately need, but are there 30 minutes that disappear into doom scrolling? An hour spent binge watching something you don't even particularly care about? Little pockets of time that could occasionally become something that actually restores you. Maybe there's a reason you keep thinking about that garden, or those painting classes, or that stack of books, or the piano you haven't touched in years. Maybe you're supposed to try it. Maybe it'll be good for your mind. Maybe it'll be good for your relationships. Maybe it'll help you feel more like yourself. Or maybe, and this is the reason enough, it'll simply bring you joy. Before you add anything else to your calendar, ask yourself, what do I naturally enjoy doing when I have unstructured time? What did I love doing before life became so busy? Is there something I keep saying I'd like to try someday? What activity makes me lose track of time in a good way? What helps me feel calmer, lighter, or more like myself afterward? What could I do without needing to be particularly good at it? Where am I spending free time that doesn't actually leave me feeling rested? Could I reclaim even 30 minutes a week for something that restores me? Is there something creative, physical, social, or outdoors that I've been curious about? Most importantly, what sounds like fun? You don't need to monetize it. You don't need to master it. You don't need to post it. You don't even need to be good at it. You just need permission to do something because it brings you joy. So here's your challenge this week, friends. Schedule a 30-minute hobby experiment or joy appointment this week. Put it on your calendar. Treat it as real. Not because it's productive, but because you're worth caring for. Choose one small thing. Read a chapter, plant something, take a walk, try a recipe, pick up a paintbrush, open the instrument case. Don't worry about whether it becomes your new favorite activity. You're simply gathering information. What gives you energy? What quiets the noise? What helps you reconnect with the person God created you to be? It took me 14 years to fully understand what Cheryl was trying to tell me in that hospital room. Get a hobby. Turns out that was pretty good advice. And this fall, you can find me in the garden figuring out whether I can actually grow vegetables. And I'll let you know how it goes. You need something in your life that isn't about achievement, productivity, or checking another box. Find something that fills your tank instead of emptying it. That's not a distraction from living a life that's called to all of it. It may be the one of the things that makes that life possible. Because being called to all of it was never supposed to mean doing it all of the time.